We all rise for a pledge of the flag. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Could the secretary please perform roll call attendance? Here. Here.
Here?
Here. 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 Okay, all the board members have received the minutes from the secretary for the October 17th meeting. If
I'll make
there's
a
no-
motion to accept the
I'll
minutes.
second that motion.
Okay, motion's made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay. Okay, our first item on the agenda this evening is an adjourned public hearing for the Kimmel subdivision. Entertain a motion to open the adjourned public hearing.
Motion made?
Second?
The motion's made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Hi, Eric Rogie with Hudson Land Design. And run you through, there's really one major change since the last time we were here. I think we talked about splitting up the shared driveway for lots 2 and 3, so we did that. I think the site distances were all ironed out. We got comments back from the health department. We made a new submission last week. Majority of the health department comments were answered on the plans that we submitted here.
Okay.
So we're working through the details of that right now. Still have not heard from the DEC.
What was it?
We still have not heard from the DEC.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, that was gonna be one of our questions for you. Okay. What about the health department?
We went through the first round of comments and we responded to them. Last Friday, I made a submission to them.
Okay.
So it was after, it's, dated more recent than what we submitted here, but it's about 95% the same as to what was submitted to planning board. I can provide copies of all that stuff as well for your records.
Okay. Just looking through the letters from the last. Those two driveways right there, that was the limit of the major changes since the last time we were here. Okay. All right, so now we have two separate driveways.
Yep.
That other one on lot, let's say, that one was like, on the other side of Pine Ridge,
Yeah.
after you make the turn there, that one you move down as well, right? That's moved down onto the power lines?
Yeah, we moved the entrance, I thought we had that on the last submission, but we moved the entrance to get sight distance on that. And then it merges back in with the existing access road, and then it splits off again.
Okay.
But we also got comments from the fire inspector too, forgot about that.
Okay.
He wants-
Fire Prevention Bureau.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He wants that driveway to be paved in its entirety, which is no problem, but he also wants a turnaround because it's over 500 foot, but I mismeasured the driveway. It's actually under 500 foot, so I'm gonna be, contact him and,
Yeah,
talk
reach
about
out to
that.
them and see.
We got space to put it in, but it's
Okay. All right. Any of the board members have any questions for the applicant?
No.
No? All right. Staff have any
No, I mean, we're curious to get that confirmation from DEC, but that's a recurring issue, and, you know. Have you followed up with them, or are you still waiting from the original?
Yeah, I followed up.
Still
The
nothing?
next will be a phone call,
Yeah.
though I don't know if the person who initially contacted us is the one who does. Not sure how that works. But I can give you their contact info if you want to.
No, it's a box that we need to check before the determination of significance, which
Yeah.
would come before the resolution. We're just looking for confirmation that there's no turtle habitat, right?
Okay. Yeah, I looked at the soil and the slopes. I don't think it's turtle habitat, but
I don't think so
who
either, but
knows?
it's so, you know, it's undeveloped, it's forested, I don't feel comfortable making that call either, so. I'm not anticipating there to be turtle habitat, but I'd like somebody from the DEC to sign up on it, that we
Okay.
can reference that correspondence in the determination of significance.
Okay, I'll try again, contacting them.
Okay. All right. John, very well.
No,
Yeah.
you know, like we discussed previously, there's a couple planned cleanups to take care of, and the health department
Okay.
to satisfy all of our comments.
All right. Jim, nothing? Okay. All right. Well, if this is an adjourned public hearing, let me open the floor if there's anybody here in the audience that has any concerns regarding this, the subdivision. Please step up to the podium. Please state your name and address for the record.
Sure. My name is Linda Rappaport. I live at 201 Pine Ridge Drive. My understanding is that there's going to be multiple dwellings built on this property. Is that true?
Yeah, it's a total of 5 lots altogether. They're building one existing house, and then there's 4 new houses going on.
So how many people, how many families does that accommodate?
There'll be 4 new families into that.
40?
4 new families. There's 4 single-family houses.
Okay. So what, I didn't completely understand what was being said about the accommodations that were made or the inquiries in terms of the DEC, and can you
Just
explain that
response.
to
They're
me?
just looking for information back from them if there are any issues. Right.
They would respond to us whether or not they believe there's potential habitat. If there's no potential habitat, the application would be able to move forward without risk of disturbing that endangered species. If there is potential habitat, the applicant would need to create a mitigation plan for any potential disturbance to that habitat.
How do you mitigate that?
A lot of it is education, because we're talking about potential endangered species habitat, not that there is, but a lot of it would be education for construction crews, what to do if they encounter that endangered species and what kind of follow-up that would need. If there's documented habitat, they might have some kind of permanent mitigating infrastructure to prevent
What would that be for an animal?
turtle fencing.
Yeah.
Oh, so,
mitigation measures with respect to habitat. To date, the applicant has not identified habitat on the site. Basically, what we're looking for is confirmation that DEC believes that there is no habitat on the site.
thank you
Okay.
for clarifying.
All right. Is there anyone else? Okay, seeing none. guess at this point, I mean, do we wait for the letters and adjourn this to another month, or?
We could adjourn the meeting in anticipation of that. We could close the meeting.
Close the public.
Yeah,
Close the
sorry,
public
close the public hearing.
right.
If you're willing to waive the 60-day requirement until we hear back from the DEC. I'm not sure how you would rather move forward. We're all expecting a certain answer from the DEC. If we get an unexpected answer, we'll need to make revisions to the plans, and in that unlikely scenario, we may want additional public hearings.
Right, we'd do an additional. So if you waive the 60-day requirement, we'll close the public hearing at this point.
Okay.
All right?
Subject to receipt of.
Yeah, but you have to, but prior to us moving forward, I mean, we're gonna have to wait upon getting the documentation that we had discussed earlier. You know, so the DEC, I guess the health department is still ongoing, so, as long as we get both of those documents and everything else, at this point has been addressed, that's been brought up. Just follow up with the fire inspector
Yeah.
regarding those comments. That would be important. But I'll leave it up to the rest of the board at this point. Entertain a motion, being that they're waiving their 60-day requirement for a decision. Entertain a motion to close the public hearing at this time.
Second.
Okay. Motion's made, seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Seeing none, the motion carries. So at this point, I guess at this point, it's, once you get that information together, then we can kind of move forward from there.
Okay.
All right?
I will do whatever I can to get an answer from the DEC.
Okay.
I know where
sounds
their
good.
office is.
There you go.
All right, Nancy.
All right. You're welcome. Have a good evening.
Thank you.
Okay. So, our next item on the agenda this evening is a public hearing for site plan and lot line consolidation for Mid-Hudson Islamic Association. I'll entertain a motion to open the public hearing.
So moved. Second.
All right, motion's made, seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Seeing none, motion carries.
I assume you want a brief overview, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, yeah, so that way everybody's aware
Okay,
of what's
good
going
evening.
on.
My name is John Andrews. I'm with the firm of Rhodey, Soika and Andrews. We're here on behalf of the Mid-Hudson Islamic Association. And we have two actions in front of you. The first is a lot consolidation. The Mid-Hudson Islamic Association owns 4 lots. They're outlined in yellow on this plat. We're going to consolidate them into one larger lot, about 17 acres all told, but they will be one lot at the end of this. At the conclusion of that lot consolidation, what they would like to do, and what was before you last time, is they'd like to construct an open-sided pavilion on what is currently, right now, an asphalt section up next to the mosque. There currently, various times there's a tent there, so what they want to do is replace that tent with a more permanent type pavilion, and then they'd like to add some parking spaces adjacent to their upper parking lot as kind of like an overflow. They don't want to pave it, they just want to put gravel down. They use it periodically when they have certain events, but under the normal course, the other parking lots seem to be fine. And then the last thing, if you recall at the meeting, my client sprung a slight addition upon me, and what we did is we added a paved multi-purpose basketball court, about 60 by 100, next to that adjacent area to give them a little expanded play area. At that time, the board at the last meeting waived the 2-foot contour requirement. They did ask for some details on the pavilion. Unfortunately, the best we could come up with what they have conceptually. We gave you 2 kind of versions of that. And we otherwise cleaned up the plans, and I believe we addressed the majority of the comments issued by the engineer.
Okay, all right. So any of the applicants, or any of the board members have any questions for the applicant? I just want to take a quick look at the two versions, that's all.
The best I can
Did see-
equate
I
it to,
did
sir, it's
see
kind of
one,
like
I just-
a picnic pavilion. It's kind of got a
Yeah,
wood
we
frame roof with some open truss work inside and some,
Yeah. So
supports.
these are the two. This is
Yep.
you have this one here, which is probably more like a wood truss roof
Right.
with some gable,
Yep.
some gable cover, and then this is more of like a steel structure,
Yeah, they're not looking for steel, but it's kind of the concept. They would prefer
Something
to go
like
with
that.
wood, It's a little more, and I would suspect they're going to kind of tailor things to mimic perhaps some of the shapes and other things on the mosque. That's why they're having a hard time, they want it to look like it belongs. Not a mosque roof, but, some of the wood supports and other things. to give-
something that's right, that's going to kind of blend it in
Yes.
with the existing building.
That is correct, sir.
Okay.
Where's that gonna go on your plan?
On that plan, this building here is the mosque.
Right.
And this out front is the imam's residence. And then there's actually a paved parking space, a paved area. I don't think it's ever been used for parking, but it's a paved area there, so the pavilion's going to fit right in here. And it'll cover the entirety of that pavement.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Everybody's looked at these?
It's like a pole barn, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, nice.
So make sure nobody has any issues with those, two variations, or, not that that's exact, that's gonna be something similar to what they're looking for.
Well, they'll be back for a final approval on that before everything goes up anyway, right?
Well, I don't know, it's up to you guys if you wanna, if we need to do that, or if you're fine with, one of something similar to this.
Especially if the location is, it's not.
Pass down, just make sure
I'm
everybody's.
fine with that.
It's going to be tucked in. You might notice it from a distance because the mosque is so striking on the hill, but
Yeah.
I don't think it's going to jump out at you.
Right. Well, the mosque is you're gonna see that before you see the pavilion.
That is correct.
Right, the mosque is much taller.
Okay. How much of that property to the right does the mosque own?
This here?
Yeah.
The mosque owns it all. It's about 12 acres. So it actually has frontage here on All Angels, goes all the way back and down. It runs behind about 3 or 4 lots on Sherwood Heights. So it's a big piece of property.
Okay, all right, well, being that this is a public hearing, and we open the floor for public comment. So is there anyone here this evening that wishes to comment or has any concerns regarding the proposal which has been presented at this time? Okay, seeing there's none. What's the board's pleasure with the application at this time?
It's fine.
I don't see
It's all good.
really.
It's all good.
Huh?
It's all good.
Yeah, they don't
Everybody said we're satisfied with what's being presented to this point?
I am.
Yes.
Okay. All right, so, well, number one, I'll entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, so motion's made, second, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Seeing as none, motion carries.
Thank you.
So, okay, now we're gonna close the, all right, so at this point, do we, if nobody's got any concerns with the proposal, do we want to authorize the planner to draft a resolution of approval?
Yes,
Yes.
Okay, so we make a
I'll
motion.
make that motion.
I'll second.
All right, motion's made, seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Seeing there's none, motion carries.
that will be on your next agenda for you to consider at that time?
Yeah, should be able to, we should have that agenda, for the next agenda, which would be the 21st. Okay,
Thank you very much. I will see you then.
okay.
Great night.
Have a great evening all.
All right, you too, take care. All right. Okay, all right. So, that brings us to our next item, is a public hearing regarding K9 Clippers Incorporated Dog Grooming, which is a home occupation proposed at 102 Chelsea Road.
Hello,
Hi, good evening.
Aniel Balaker, 102 Chelsea Road.
Okay, but I guess for the record, I guess give us a quick proposal, or a
Okay.
quick overview of what you're looking to do.
I'm looking to have a permit to work from home, to groom a couple of dogs out of the house, out of my home.
Okay. All right. So, okay, so I guess we did have some discussion at the last meeting, I guess regarding some of the issues. And I guess, hold on, we didn't have any, oh, sorry. No,
I'll make a
probably-
motion to open the public hearing.
I'll second that.
All right, motion's made, seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, sorry about that, little procedural thing I forgot to do. All right, which isn't a problem, but, so I guess we did have some discussion. Did anybody have any letters for this meeting? There was nothing, right?
We didn't have any new plans for it.
Okay.
We did get the letter in from Dutchess County Department of Health, but that was the only
Yeah,
new letter.
still
for
the
this
same.
project. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. All right, so there's really nothing, all right. So it is a public hearing, and I have to ask the question, is there anybody here from the audience tonight that wishes to speak, or has any concerns regarding the proposal at 102 Chelsea Road? Okay. Seeing there's none, I guess we can go ahead and entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Second?
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, so the motion carries. All right, so that's just formality we gotta go through. There's nobody here that has made any comments regarding it. So I guess at this point, I believe that we're in a position now to go ahead and authorize the planner to draft a resolution,
Yes.
right, regarding a couple of concerns that we discussed earlier this evening.
Correct.
All right. So, I know the last meeting you were here, we discussed the installation of a hair trap on the tub that you would be using, I guess, to wash the dogs. We'd have the planner, put that into the resolution, so you'd have to maintain a hair trap
Okay,
on any tub that you would use to clean any of the animals. Also, how many customers were you expecting a day?
about 2 to 3.
2 to 3? All right. Do you see that as growing in the future?
No.
To anything? Nothing?
Nope.
No.
I'm looking to downsize from what I'm doing now.
All right. What is everybody's feeling with that?
So we were,
Huh?
give her 7, right?
Everybody's still in agreement on the 7?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So we figure we'll put in there the maximum of seven customers per day,
Okay,
and up to 1 employee in case at some point you wanted to have somebody come in and help you during the
wonderful.
day.
Thank you.
And then the hair trap we discussed already, so with those items, as we discussed earlier, what's everybody's, do we authorize the planner at this point to draft the resolution?
Yes.
Yes.
Somebody make the motion.
So I'll make a motion, second draft resolution,
Okay,
following conditions.
Nice and easy.
all right. So motion's made, seconded by
Paul.
Nick, okay? All right, okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, so the motion carries. So we'll have the planner draft the resolution that we have to vote upon at the next meeting.
Okay,
Okay, so that's basically your approval at that point.
okay.
All right?
Can she, if she wants, can she apply for the hair trap gizmo now?
Yeah.
Like sometimes she doesn't have to wait for the resolution.
Yeah, no, she could,
That makes sense.
So the condition will just say that, you know, it's income and
Yeah.
that she
How do
has
I
it, not that she has
apply?
to.
With a building permit.
And what?
Call me tomorrow, with a building
Okay,
permit.
okay.
But I just thought, because if,
Yeah,
since
it's
there's
a
really
move-
no
Thank you.
conditions,
Thank you.
right.
21st, if they say yes, at least
Yes.
shortly thereafter,
I
you
appreciate
could
it.
actually
Right, then you
start
could,
working
right, then you
legally.
could start, just to, yeah.
What? Oh, that's right, don't call me tomorrow, I won't be here. Everyone should vote. Call me Wednesday, or email me, I'll answer you tomorrow by email.
Okay.
Thank
Okay.
you. Have a good night.
The certified, do you need
Leave those
these?
to be.
Okay.
All right. Okay,
By the way, if you put that on those children, don't make it a condition of having it for a
simple
year.
enough.
Make
All
it
right,
a condition of a CO.
okay. All right, so our next item on the agenda this evening is a discussion regarding a site plan, special use permit for Funmax Adventure Park LLC, Wappinger. Is there anybody here for that project?
Do you want me to check out in the hall?
Crickets.
Yeah,
Just poke my head out.
We have crickets. Might as well tell the others to come in. This will be brief.
nobody here.
Next thing you hear.
Anybody here for Funmax?
One Funmax in here.
Nope,
He's not out there.
nobody's there.
Next?
He's not out there. He might be in the bathroom or something. He's not out in the hall waiting.
Nobody out there.
He ain't here. He ain't here. Yep.
We could do CarMax and see if he's here when we're done.
I mean, it's just a vote on the approval.
Yeah.
And if they don't have a, huh?
Can you go on,
I mean, we could vote on it, I mean,
I-
maybe
Yeah.
they just didn't
Not presenting
anticipate
anything,
any, I mean, maybe they read it and they just decided not to come out tonight.
yeah.
That's, yeah, very possible, right?
All right, I mean, nobody contacted you regarding this? No, Funmax? Yeah, so that, they received the resolution, so,
so wanna just vote on it since we're all here?
okay,
Anyone else wanna go back on there again?
yeah.
Yeah, they're not from the area.
All
Well, no, Steve Owens.
Good.
Nothing.
Okay. All right, would everybody want to just vote on this and?
I think so.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so, obviously all board members have gotten the approval. I'll entertain a motion, entertain a motion to approve the resolution as drafted by the planner.
I'll move that.
Second.
Okay, motion's made, seconded, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Seeing none, motion carries. All right. So hopefully the applicant was fine with the resolution. All right. Which now brings us to the next item on the agenda this evening, which is a site plan and special use permit for CarMax Auto Superstore.
Good evening, Richard O'Rourke from Keenan Bean, attorneys for the applicant. Moving along very quickly, so I'm glad I got here on time. I apologize, we had some traffic. So, I know all of you are familiar with the application, and here tonight, We have Steve Hudak from CarMax. Jeff. Getting close. So Steve Hudak is here from CarMax, along with Brian Pulsifer. We also have Brian Loth, who is here from CenterPoint, who is our planning consultant as well. We are in receipt of the review letters. Thank you very much. And what I wanted to do, just for the record, just to confirm a couple things. Number one, I think that the planning board has now received a letter that CarMax sent to Supervisor Richard Thurston, which sets forth the support that we have for the effort to bring water and sewer to this property as well as the south part of Route 9. I want to make sure that everybody has it, and I can make sure a copy of it is in the record. Are you familiar with that letter?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. We had conversations with John Aarons, who is the co-trustee of the estate of Lou Paggiata, who of course passed away and was the owner of this property for a very long period of time. I believe that a copy of that was sent to Town Hall today, and I would like to make sure that a copy of that is in the record as well. And if you've seen it, then you know that
Yes.
it chronicles over the years the difficulty they've had in terms of trying to sell this property and develop it, principally because of the lack of infrastructure, water and sewer. And also, because of that lack, there was an inability to come forward with an application that would be something that would be acceptable to the town. Uses that did come forward realized the restrictions that were with this property simply because of the lack of sewer and water. And the uses that, self-storage, U-Haul, all of those uses were ones that the town had expressed, shall we say, not a warm and fuzzy feeling about having that on Route 9. So once again, I just want to make sure a copy of that is in the record as well. And lastly, for the record, I have copies of the resume of Paul Mercier, our lighting consultant, who is here this evening as well, and would like to address the board with respect to his comments that were part of the last submission, part of the application. So I'd like to make that a part of the record as well. And of course, what we would like to do is once again, address the board, discuss with you how we believe CarMax is different from your typical car dealership for a number of reasons. Steve is going to go through that with you. We'll explain the information and the background that brought us to this point in terms of why we believe the two areas that make us distinct in some respects is the nature of the business being different from a car dealership, and based upon national information, why the parking that's required for a successful operation is, shall we say, different from what your code necessarily requires for a traditional car dealership. After Steve speaks, Paul would like to address the board in terms of lighting and take it from there.
Okay. All right, let's hear we could hear what he has to say.
Okay.
Yeah, again, I think the board is kind of, has stated their feelings about the lighting.
Well, we're not here to debate. We're
I know,
here to-
that's
Kind of,
I-
well, yeah, we stated what, our feelings were and stuff on the lighting and everything, but there was no changes on the plans at all.
Well,
So
I,
kind of think we know already what you want, and
Yeah.
what we want is just to follow the code.
understand. With all due respect, we thought that perhaps the most recent submission might, shall we say, illuminate the discussion. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Steve Hudak.
We could, yeah, I mean, turn it over, well, we could definitely hear what he has to say, and.
That's all we
see
can
if he's
ask at
got-
this point.
Right, yeah, we'll see what his, what his take is on it, and we'll go from there.
Okay,
Okay?
thank you very much.
Yeah.
All right, first, Steve will address the board. Thank you.
Okay.
Good evening, board members. I am Steve Hudak. I am Design Development Manager with CarMax. Do I need to identify an address for the record, or am I good to proceed? Yep, 12,800 Tuckahoe Creek Parkway, Richmond, Virginia. Okay, thank you. So, Rick has already done some of the things I was going to do. I was going to introduce my team. He's already done it. Anyone from a technical perspective is available to speak tonight. We would typically, and we have typically started out by going through all the issues that we have addressed, and I think it's been a long discussion, and I think it was a good partnership to get to where we're at on the site plan. And if you guys want to go through that, I've got Brad here who can walk us through it. I was not going to do that because I think you've heard most of those discussions before. With respect to where we think we are with this application, I think we're down to two issues. The broad issues are the maximum parking requirement under your code. I don't think we ever got to a final resolution on that. And then the second one, and we've already alluded to that, is a further conversation about lighting. So just in general, I just wanted to assure the board that every time we get comments, and they're thoughtful comments we get from the board, we do take them back and we discuss them. Like as an example, the view corridor from the residence along Osborne Hill Road, we rotated the building, so we do take those things, we go back, we have conversations, and we try to evaluate all those things that we can do. One of the things, or some of the discussions we've had with respect to lighting is we've expressed concern just operationally. We sell used cars, some of them have blemishes, having bright enough light levels to see the distinction in color, distinction in blemishes, and so forth. Operationally, that's important to us, but in our previous conversations, this board said, well, our code is our code. We appreciate that, but we're not really interested in those reasons. So, we took that back and we had conversations about it. And as a company, we've got a 30-day warranty and a 7-day money-back guarantee. So we rationalize that as, well, we still have a way to make our customers whole, so that's fine, it's acceptable, we'll proceed. And I think in a subsequent meeting, we had talked about loss prevention and our concerns about being able to see folks running around the site, stealing hubcaps, those types of things. And I think one of the board members up here made a comment with today's technologies and infrared and all those things, you really don't need that, you can see anyway. So we went back and talked with loss prevention about that, and whoever said that, you're absolutely right. With new technology, we can put the infrared cameras in, we can see. We may lose some capabilities with facial recognition, but that's fine. The issue where I think we're stumbling, at least internally from my management team, is safety. And we get concerned when lighting levers to the point people are stepping off curbs, there's people with strollers. Every part of our site has pedestrian activity and car activity. So safety becomes our issue. And I think it feathers over into the parking discussion also. We know how many customers we're going to have on site, and trying to operate our business in a parking field that's too small, ends up with people circling the lot and parking in places where may not be available. So I think our underlying concern is safety, and I think that's sort of where we want to lead our discussion today. But with that, I'm going to just get in a little bit more specificity. I want to jump into the parking issue, if we can start with that one. Is that acceptable?
Okay. Yeah, that's fine.
All right, so in our previous conversations, we've kind of talked about CarMax as an operator, 235 locations around the country. We kind of know what we need to operate our business. So in our dialogue with the board is we've submitted sites that are substantially similar to this trade area. In population and demographic, we expect similar results from this location to the ones that we submitted. And we provided site plans and aerials for people to observe, for the board to observe, how they compare. So our internal metrics, we have a range that we want to operate in. And you'll see from the data that we had submitted, 77 parking spaces is our request on this parking lot. It's at the low end of the range, and it's consistent with one of the other site plans that we had submitted. On the high end, on those examples, you'll see there's one in the 120s. So we're already conceding what we know our range, our operating range, our sweet spot is. And excuse me. Oh, I guess I should comment. The code requires 30 parking spaces. Our request is 77 on the site plan. So just to define the differences. And when we look at your code and what it says, the way it's written really makes no distinction between the way dealerships operate, whether it's a 2-acre site, a 40-acre site. But there are distinctions in the way we operate. So aside from the submission that we made for demographically similar sites, I think there are other topics to discuss that will drive distinctions. Oh, by the way, what your code says, just for specificity, it says any dealership is allowed 10 parking spaces for visitors, plus a ratio of 2 spaces per 3 employees. Okay, so whether you're on an acre lot, a 40-acre lot, whether you operate the same way as other businesses, that's what's driving the parking requirements. So I guess the first thing I want to comment is the way a traditional car dealership operates. 40 to 50% of their revenues are driven off of service. They do all the warranty work. So you buy a car, you get a 3-year, 36,000-mile warranty. Sometimes it's 550. There's recalls. All that work is mandated to be done by the OEMs. We can't do that work. Other shops can't do that work. So they've got a self-perpetuating business where they've got these large service departments. And because of those large service departments, they've got more employees. And those employees are what's driving their parking counts. So CarMax is different than that. Particularly on this site, we've got 3 service bays. They've probably got 20 in a standard bay. So they are allowed more parking just because they operate their business differently than ours, but your code doesn't allocate for those differences. The other thing traditional car dealerships do is when they bring a site plan and they commingle all their parking spaces, where the customers park, where they store cars in the back, where their inventory goes, they're all commingled, and they draw a circle in the plan and they say, this is our customer parking, it meets whatever the code requires, and everything else, but there's no differentiation between them. Our site plans actually break the parking areas into pieces, so we know that the area designated for customers is the area designated for customers. I did want to talk about CarMax being an innovation company. We're really driven by data and striving to constantly improve. So as way of an example, when I started 16 years ago, we were doing 20,000 square foot sales buildings, and we were averaging 50 to 80 employees out of those buildings. And through continual innovation and efficiencies, today we're going around and we're getting sites approved with about 7,500 square feet of building, and we're on average between 20 and 40 employees. So because we're highly innovative and we improve our business and we're a world-class operator, under your code, we get penalized for it. You know, if we were still building the 20,000 square foot buildings with 80 employees, we'd probably be achieving what we need. Just as way of anecdote, about 12 years ago, I was in a quarterly meeting and our CEO was giving a presentation. And he listed the top 20 high volume dealerships in the country. And 19 of those were CarMax. So when you compare the way we operate to the way other car dealerships operate, we have a much higher turn ratio with respect to our sales. And for a little bit further data, when you look on the corridor, not just in Wappinger, but from Fishkill to Poughkeepsie, all the car dealerships along that row, average car dealership along that row is selling 81 units a month. And they're doing it out of an average 25,000 square foot building. Again, predominantly driven by their service departments. If you take the top 3 car dealerships on that corridor, they're selling 385 cars, and they're doing it out of 75,000 square feet of building. An average CarMax will sell 335 cars, and we do it out of 7,500 square foot buildings. So these are all examples of why you can't take a code that's meant to be generalized and apply it across all uses. And it's why the code, quite frankly, had provisions for boards to make concessions and to listen to testimony of why things are different, why one user might need something different than another user. So with that, I'm going to pause and see if the board has any comments with respect to parking, or do you want me to roll on to lighting?
Well, we could have a discussion on the parking. Does any of the board members have anything they want to discuss regarding this?
No, not really, no.
Yeah. Malcolm, would you like to interject with any of your thoughts before we move on to another issue?
I mean, we're operating off of limited information. We don't have parking studies for these sites. We just have the site plans that they're given. I'm happy to answer any questions that the planning board has on the subject, though. I have included, I mean, it's limited information, but in my comment memo, I did investigate the sites that they provided and provided you the occupancy rates. It's not perfect science. It's a snapshot out of the day. It's, you know, I don't know what your busiest hours in a business day are. The aerial imagery that I looked at was in the middle of the day, right? Daylight hours. That's when they take those pictures. The occupancy rate for one of your locations has not been completed yet. 2 of your locations at an occupancy rate of about 50-55% in the customer employee lot, and 2 of them had an occupancy rate of about 15% in the customer employee lot.
Okay.
Again, though, it's not a parking study. It's not comprehensive. It doesn't look at the whole day. It's a snapshot out of the day. But none of them were 80 or plus in terms of occupancy, which is what I was looking to see. If that snapshot showed that kind of occupancy, which is just what you aim for.
I guess my only comment to that, and I think you've identified the shortcoming in doing it that way, and obviously you have no better data than that. But the shortcoming is, when is the peak hour? And it's very similar to a traffic study. You know, you design roadways based upon the peak hour traffic, and you know, our site would have a peak hour, just like the roadways would have a peak hour, and you're comparing those things. For a parking study, the peak hour is probably very similar for our operation. And I can't comment on when the peak hour for this particular application would be, and it varies across the country. But generally speaking, Friday nights and Saturday afternoons are the peak, and the sites are designed for the peak. You know, so other than that, I don't know what more I can add to that discussion.
We've had this on other kinds of applications as well, and the last thing in the world that any, shall we say, commercial developer wants to do is spend extra money in terms of constructing parking, constructing stormwater management, unless it feels that it is really, really necessary. And so that's one of the, counterpoint is that obviously CarMax it's not a McDonald's, but, there's certain systems that are available. They can estimate what is appropriate based upon their national data. And they certainly don't want to overspend money in terms of creating impervious surfaces and stormwater. So, it's not as though this is something that they would do unless they believe that it was appropriate based upon their information nationwide. So that's the distinction. So.
All right. What's the board's feeling with the parking? Stick with, sticking with the number that, per the code, or are we gonna let the applicant have the opportunity to go to the ZBA?
Is the code is specific to the car dealership? I mean, if there's no, it's just, there's no exception for that written down?
No.
Because
No.
it's still a car dealership, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Regardless of whether he sells more cars or not.
We're talking about.
Well, they also, compared to a regular car dealership, they do a lot more online business than a regular car dealership. So if you're giving us your car dealer, the number you quoted before, your sales number, so you'd have to, I bet, it's gotta be 15% or so is probably an online business, I would assume.
I actually looked that up this morning. 100% online includes reservations, finance application, your trade-in, and creating an online sales order. So we would call that an online sale. 9% of our business is that. If any one of those components is part of the sale, so if somebody goes on and reserves a car, or they put the financing application in, we would call that an omni-channel transaction. So it started online but finished on site. 56% of our sales are done that way. And then obviously the other component is 100% on site, like a traditional car purchase would be.
My issue is the size of the waiver. It would make our lives difficult moving forward, granting a waiver of that size.
But we sell
Any applicant that comes.
It's actually, because you're asking for more than twice the.
But we sell 5 times as many cars as the average dealership in the corridor. I mean, we are different.
Well,
I understand, I understand completely what your anticipated volume. I understand that, that's how it's not gonna work, but, again, is this, you're asking for more, because you have more volume, is this, I guess one of the concerns is this become, customer parking, or has it become additional parking for staging?
Well,
for.
if that's the concern.
There's two different provisions in the code.
Hmm.
So this is, parking for this application comes under 240-67.
Yeah,
So the 77
it's for
spaces
the
is
customers
for-
and employees.
Correct. And then 240-67D has a requirement that the number of vehicles on any given site shall not exceed a maximum of 70 per gross acre. This maximum density pertains to all vehicles on the site, including but not limited to display, storage, repair, customer, and employee vehicles. So there's two,
Meant to limit the inventory size.
so I don't know what,
They're under the number of cars per acre.
So the overall between vehicles for sale, sales and customer parking,
Inventory and
overall
service.
on the lot is below 70 per acre.
Yes,
Okay.
yes,
So they meet that requirement.
yes. But the board will also need to consider in their evaluation of this waiver request, yes, they're different type of business model, but there are aesthetic and community character elements to this. And we're talking about an employee and customer lot that's more than twice the size than the code provides for, and that is also part of the intent of the code, to limit the visual impact of a car dealership, particularly one that is visible on 3 sides.
But that number in the code doesn't take into account the size of the lot?
It does. It's a certain number of vehicles per acre.
No, I mean, the parking.
Parking for employee and customer?
Right.
It does not, no. It's
So-
just the size of the
So if it's 1
operation.
acre lot, you still get 30 lot?
No. It's, they get 10 regardless of the size of the lot for customers,
Okay.
and they get 2 for every 3 employees, so the size of their facility.
Regardless
right?
of
Those are their,
how many acres
those are the
the lot is?
employee spaces, yes.
So the highest volume car dealership that's gonna be on the corridor gets 10 customer parking spaces plus spaces for employees. I mean, that's why the request is as, what appears to be as grand as it is. By the way, somebody commented that the customer lot's visible in 3 streets, and the customer lot's only visible in Smithstation, Smithtown Road.
The site is visible.
The site is visible,
from
but
3
I
sides.
think we're talking about the parking related to the customer parking lot.
Do we know what the overall parking vehicle number is for site-wide, including inventory parking?
Brad,
300.
There's 270 spaces for
Did we ever get a number for the service area? So remember that was discussed, and I was under the impression that this was settled and that you were below the cars per acre, but I also know that the sales area does not identify the number of cars that would be back there necessarily. And that would also be included in that calculation, but.
Do you have the copy of that site plan on there you could put up on the screen? Showing that with the area in the back, where it's all identified with how many cars are going back there?
Good evening. For the record, I'm Karen Majanowski with Bowler Engineering. And just to present the amount of parking spaces proposed on the site, as previously mentioned, in the customer and employee area, 77 spaces are proposed. And then within the remaining sales display area, which is the larger parking lot you see from Route 9 that wraps back around the south side of the site, there are 270 spaces.
Yeah, do you have a number for the service area? I know that might be in flux and it hasn't been shown on the plans in the past, but is there an estimated number?
So that would be for this back area?
Mhm.
105? It's 105.
105 in that back area, right. I believe that was the area of concern that the Fire Prevention Bureau had because of the, right. So, and this is the site plan showing the layout, and it doesn't show how a vehicle can maneuver in there.
So we provided that on one of our detail sheets where we labeled the fire lanes. And then we also added this striped area to ensure that the truck could, A, get close enough to the building, and B, be able to turn around so that cars are never parked there.
Malcolm, these numbers that they have is all what you've used to calculate the compliance with the
Even with the additional 100
the 70 cars per acre.
Just double check.
So it's 70 per acre in the site, according to code, it says gross area, and it's 7.57 acres. So,
Okay.
Doesn't work.
Yeah, so at 7.5, 70 an acre, they would be capped at 525 cars on the entire lot. They're at 452. I mean, they're below their per acre
They're
requirement.
low,
It's just the
okay.
employee and customer lot that is an issue.
That's with a waiver.
No, no.
No, no.
That's the way it's laid out now.
So
Yes.
there's-
So yes,
there's-
in theory, yes, if the waiver for the front, but they're still below the number
For the total.
for
Yeah,
the total on the lot itself.
There's two parking calculations at play here. One is to limit the size of the employee and customer lot, and one is to limit the total cars on the lot for automobile dealerships, and that's 70 per acre. And a separate number would be the, 30 for the customer and employee lot. The waiver is requesting 77.
And one more thought. Somebody had expressed the concern that perhaps the customer employee lot would be used for additional inventory storage or something along those lines. You could condition the approval so that Barbara's got the authority to, if we started doing that she's got a club to hammer on us. So that's maybe a way to address it. Our intention isn't to make it just an expanded sales lot. If it were, we'd be showing it on the site plan as such.
So what's everybody's feeling regarding the waiver for this, for the parking?
I'm not for it. I'm not for it. Code's the code.
Okay.
Is there a number that you would be open to? I mean, the code clearly allows for deviations, and it's there because different users operate differently. I mean, when I hear a statement, the code's the code, I mean, technically what your code says is you're not allowed to have more than 30 spaces, and you're not allowed to have less than 30 spaces, so you have to have 30 spaces. And I'm sure that wasn't the intent of the code, but that's the way it reads.
Right. It might not be the intent, to that degree, but,
There are
Percentage.
potential requests to
Yeah.
reduce parking requirements,
yeah,
which are, much more amenable to the board than
right.
waivers
But I mean,
to
the 30,
increase parking.
right, the 30 sets like a minimum number.
Yes.
So, then this is what comes into play, is that's a minimum number, so what percentage are we looking at as a, over the top of that? What have we, and again, this is something that would have to be researched out on our end. Has anybody in the past had an issue with, where they provided more than what was minimum requirement was? Giving us a ballpark idea of what the percentage would be. Obviously, I don't think anybody's ever come back with a, more than 100% increase, to this. So what is is there a number, that the board can go with, that the board can feel a little more comfortable stating yes or no?
I don't know of any variances in the last 20 years that requested this type of parking increase.
The only thing I can think of were pre-existing lots with a change of use, where suddenly this new use had a parking lot that was larger than was required, but there are provisions for that in the code. I can't
Right.
recall an example of a waiver request for,
Right.
150% increase in
No,
parking.
I mean, definitely not that much. but-
No, all of the requests that we
Yeah.
get are for reducing the parking.
Right.
The code says we need to have 30 spaces, we think we only need 15. Can we get a reduction?
And we land bank.
And then we land bank, and then it's,
Right,
we
it's
have
usually,
designated
right, it's
spaces.
usually the other direction, where it's,
Yeah.
they're not providing the amount that the code requires, they would then, land bank, X number of spots on the property to show that they have the potential to put it in for some reason that doesn't, the numbers that they provide didn't work, and they actually do need the increase in parking.
The result of really probably a code that overprescribes parking for most.
Yeah. Yeah. Like I said, the numbers that we work with usually are, like you said, they're overprescribed only because they're based upon old numbers. Especially the retail numbers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Shopping centers, things like that.
Yes, yeah, exactly. So, I mean, we're kind of at a, we're kind of, yeah. Yeah, I know, you heard from the board members, they're not really looking to, to give 100, more than 100% waiver on this. Is there something in between?
So, forgive me, I just want to make sure I understand. There is a maximum number of parking spaces based upon the acreage, and we're well in compliance with that.
Yes, but that is intended to limit the size of the sales lot, right?
Correct.
It's a total for service, sales, display, employee, and customer.
Correct, I understand that, all right, but we're below that number, okay. So, however, it's the mix that we have the issue with, and as you know, one of the things that you are empowered under the code, and what we've asked for, is that there should be a reduction in the size of the parking spaces for the sales area, display area, and different from other car dealerships, that is a restricted area, and the only drivers that are allowed in there are CarMax employees to pull the cars out. So what we're trying to do is minimize impervious surface in that area, which is different from what a traditional car dealership would do, because we have a control area. I have on other applications involving the repurposing of the Union Carbide headquarters down Mount Pleasant and Greenberg, where what we did was the board was concerned that we did not have enough parking. And so we had to make provision and I have no authority for saying this for my client here, but with the Green Creek for additional areas that were set aside purposely just in case the parking was required. Obviously, here, based upon all the national data, they're telling us what they perceive is the demand. If what you're saying and what makes it more palatable, given the size of, notwithstanding all the distinctions we have as not being a traditional car dealership, if in fact what might work is we have a modest increase in terms of that demand that we believe is necessary, and we set aside additional areas in the likelihood, and we think it will probably be likely, of additional area reserved for the possibility that the parking calculations we did were correct, and that there is the necessity for setting aside additional area for parking. I'm just throwing it out. I have absolutely no authority for my client, but I'm just saying, I know in other communities, municipalities, they've done this, so.
Basically saying, what you're saying is reduce that parking area down and just land bank additional parking spaces in case the need arises?
What I'm saying is that for the 77 parking spaces that we believe are necessary, that area is set aside for 77 parking spaces. You grant us the approval for a more modest number than the 77, with the understanding that we reserve the other area, and in the event that our forecasts are correct, and we see that then there be a recognition that we are truly that distinct from other car dealerships. Now, I'm saying I have no authority. I haven't talked to them about that, but I'm just throwing it out there for discussion. I'm not fired.
Just one other consideration. So if this application were any other car dealership coming through here, what they wouldn't have was a secured sales area, and they wouldn't have a secured working process, Woodbury in the back. So there wouldn't be those walls, there wouldn't be those protections. We need them because of the way we operate. So for us to hit the sales volumes that we need, we want the process to be as efficient as possible. So all the keys for our cars are on the cars, so when we're walking the site with the customer and say, hey, I want to take this one for a test drive, you can just jump in and go. So we secure the lot so that the cars just don't disappear in the middle of the night. But if we came with this application and we didn't have the parameters, you know, the protections, the walls, this would be 100% compliant because we would just draw a box around 30 parking spaces and say that's the customer parking spaces. And that's what the other car dealerships do when they come through with an application. They identify the areas that are customer, and then when a customer shows up, they just park wherever there's a space.
All right.
So it's
I
because
know
of the
I know
way
what
we
you're
operate.
saying. It's, yeah.
I mean, otherwise we're compliant.
Well, you're compliant with one section, but not the other section. That's all. That's what it's really coming down to. I mean, what's the board's?
I stick with what we said the last time they were here.
Yeah.
And they were supposed to, do whatever, submit a change on their,
Yeah.
on their end, but they kind of ignored us and just didn't.
No, I agree.
It's the same discussion as last time.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, I mean, just to put it on the record, I mean, the board had a discussion earlier this evening with staff. The board is kind of unhappy with some of the applications that come back. And I'll put this on the record. What happened was that, this came back with very minimal changes, okay? The review letters, come back and there's really no recommendations on them. They identify the issues, for us to discuss at these meetings. And sometimes the board feels that sometimes without significant changes to the plans, what happens is we feel that it really shouldn't come back in front of us again until something, on paper is a little closer or there's a little more detail to what we're looking for. And the board is, it's expressed interest in pulling applications from the agenda a few days before the meeting. And this is one of those applications that is very ripe for that condition. So I just wanted to put that out there on the record.
I get it. I mean, I guess
Okay.
I would argue in defense. We testified and we talked about what we're going to come back and submit. We're going to come back and submit the examples with
Right.
site plans and aerials. So we did exactly what we said we were going to do in our resubmission. So it shouldn't have been a surprise.
Right, right, it shouldn't have been a surprise that nothing changed.
I suppose.
I get where you're coming from, and you're you're very persistent to try to get what you want. I understand that, but I do clearly remember saying, it was one thing I did specifically say was, and this comes again, as, the board is a collective whole, I'm just a spokesperson at this point, and I'll assume everybody will back me up on this, but I did say, possibly when you resubmit, that you would come back with far less waivers than what was submitted. And we're looking at all the same waivers. Correct?
Well, if I may, in our defense.
Just yes or no, do we come back with all the same waivers?
In two areas, yes. Yeah, but with
Okay.
all respectfully, a comment was made, don't have 3 road cuts. We went back, we re-engineered, we eliminated one of the road cuts. There were concerns regarding the circulation around it from the fire department. I believe, as Karen explained, we thought that with the redesign, based upon the comment, we responded and we
Yep.
did change it.
Okay.
And we have done that. We also, based upon what we were told, and we said, look, we will set aside property for the purposes of your utility infrastructure should it come about, and we've done that as well. Now, with respect to the lighting and the parking, part of the problem we have is that based upon the data that we have and based upon nationwide data and analysis, we believe this is the parking that is required. So that's the problem we're having, is that we have, yes, come back with the same number, because we then went back and restudied and found the same answer. And so too with the lighting. And those are areas where we're not talking about trying to be pigs. We're not talking about trying to pave more areas for impervious surface. We don't want to do that. They don't want to necessarily spend money that's not needed. So that's why I'm saying maybe a way of approaching this, as has happened with some other jurisdictions. Okay, we understand what you're saying. We respect it. The problem is that this is different from your traditional car dealership. I'm not aware of any other car dealerships where the area where the cars for sale are locked in, controlled, and they're only driven out of that control area by an employee of CarMax. Otherwise, you slap the plate on it and you take it for a test drive. And that's why we can respectfully request a reduction in the size of the parking spaces. There is a provision in your code that does provide for waivers where cars are delegated for a particular purpose, and there the parking lot size can be reduced, and that's what we did. What we can do from our perspective, based upon their models and their experience and their information, we've done what we think we could do, and we're at a point now where we're hoping that we can resolve this issue. I think I understand the legislative intention. I certainly do. But I also understand that one of the restrictions is the total number of parking spaces that we could have on the property. And we're providing less than the maximum number that we could ask for had we not had the distinction of being CarMax with the kinds of uses that we have. So.
You guys want to? Well, do we want to discuss the lighting first before? Because I think we need to have a quick consultation with an executive session with
Bruce?
with council.
I would just mention that there are other parking waivers, the reduction in geometry and the size. In the past, you had entertained that. You have not since discussed it. While we're on the subject of parking, we might want to discuss whether or not that waiver is still amenable to the board.
Yeah. Well, I think everybody, I don't know. I think that the board probably wants to discuss some of the issues and consequences of granting some of the waivers from council. I think that's where, I think that's what the concern is from the board members. I mean, anybody can speak up and, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think where we're really talking about here tonight?
Yes.
Right.
Yes, okay.
Correct.
All right. So, do we want to listen to just the arguments about the lighting before we go in and discuss this with council?
Well, I think he said it was a safety issue that they were claiming and a security issue.
Okay. All right. So, maybe at this point, maybe give us, give us like 5-10 minutes. I'm going to make a motion. Somebody make a motion. You want to go into executive session?
Go into executive session.
To-
Second that.
Okay, and it's to, okay, motion's made, second, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay. You gonna have the attorney, with the planner as well
Yes.
in there?
Yep.
Okay.
So
So
do
why don't
we
you give us,
step out?
no, we'll go out, we're gonna go in the other room.
Yeah.
Okay, so give us,
10 minutes.
10 minutes, and we'll be right back.
Bruce, I'll go.